Boom, baby. What up? Hey, this is Morad Fiki. I am live with top Texas real estate attorney and good friend of mine, Briselda Luna. How are you doing today?
Hi, Fee, Morad. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, given the circumstances. Feel like I'm in prison. At least we go on Facebook Live and like reach people. But yeah, it's been pretty hectic. Especially.
Educate clients at least.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I'm being made to be a school teacher now. Which is like, I'm not a school teacher. you
You
know.
were telling me, I know my friend has a baby in New York, and he's like, it is really tough up here. They're going
Yeah,
through the worst of it, and he's like, we're having to homeschool, and we take turns. My wife and I, she does morning, and I do afternoon. And are they doing that in Houston? They're actually going to the school to pick up the kids' food, like they're giving them food still, like good food. Is that true?
yeah. Well, Spring Branch ISD, they put out a message. See, the sad thing is, a lot of children, their parents are depending. They're barely making ends meet, and now when they're not working, it's even worse. So
Yeah,
a lot of children, go to school and get their meal at school, unfortunately.
that's true.
So some of the school districts, I know Spring Branch has stepped up and said, hey, we're going to keep the school lunch going. So
Mhm.
just swing by and pick it up if you need it.
Exactly. Well,
Um,
hopefully whoever needs it is going to pick it up, and we'll get through this. This shall pass, like every other tragedy in the world. Everybody
yeah,
has to stay
that's what I've been
positive.
saying. I've been saying, we've been through worse. I mean, we've been through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the financial crisis of 2008.
Hmm.
Obviously, there's nothing ever happened like this, where this is like a worldwide pandemic and everybody's pretty much on lockdown. Um, I'm so glad that you joined us today because a lot of people have questions, and let's just start off with uh, foreclosures and evictions. If people aren't working and they can't make the rent payments, I mean, can they be evicted right now? That's kind of crazy.
It is. It's really tough. So what the government is doing at the state level, everybody's handling it by state. The Texas Supreme Court put out a moratorium that nobody can be evicted from their home in the next until April 30th. And if you go county by county, like Dallas is doing it until like
Okay.
May 18th. So check with your specific county. If you're not in Houston, we're in the Houston area, but double check. But it's at least through April 30th. And from what I've heard and talking to some of my sources, I think it'll be extended even through at least mid-May. So just stay tuned for that in the news. Yeah, it's
That's
pretty bad.
awesome. So a landlord can't file an eviction right now, or it's not even going to be considered until.
Well, the courts are actually closed for hearings right now, and most of my eviction hearings have been postponed through May, but you can still file an eviction
Okay.
lawsuit. You can still file it electronically, or your attorney can file it for you. We're still filing documents. I filed something yesterday on a motion, but you can't physically get a hearing. So the clerk called me on one of my cases in one of the courts and said, hey, you're set until May, but if you want to set it for submission, which means the judge will just look at it, we don't go in, and then they make a ruling on it, and you'll get a much faster result. So that's what I did. So it's going to be case by case basis as far as whether or not they can evict them. But as far as filing, yes, they can file. Can they get a hearing for an actual eviction right now? No.
Okay. Yeah, that's I think that was a great decision by the Texas Supreme Court. I mean, there's a lot of people who need help right now. And also I noticed that the foreclosures were canceled for April, I think May also. So
Yes.
there's no foreclosure
So
sale.
foreclosures are being postponed for April and May, and that's obviously for the same reasons. They can't have any social distancing, so they can't have things where people are in close proximity. But I think it's good for the tenants who actually need it. Like, of course, I've had clients call me where their tenants are still paying on time. So the key is, if you do have the money to pay your rent, pay it. It's not like, oh, well, they can't evict me, so I'll just not pay my rent. That's not the point. The point of this is to help the people that were severely impacted by the COVID-19. So my recommendation is, if you can pay your rent, pay your rent and your utilities, even though they're offering concessions. But if you cannot, then take advantage of this. If you've been unemployed as a result of this, like millions of Americans, then take advantage of this and talk. There's always talking to your landlord. I was speaking to someone the other day when I did a radio show, and I said, hey, talk to them on the phone. Pick up the phone and say, hey, can you work with me? We're all affected by this, not just one person. So I think people are becoming more empathetic, and they're becoming more like understanding. They're feeling the situation. So I think you could also call your landlord and try to negotiate something. Hey, can I pay half? Or would you be okay if I pay you, next month or something like that? And I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised that most landlords are really willing to work with you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. That is an absolutely great point. Another thing that I wanted to ask you. So we're still selling homes. We're still showing homes. As you know, Texas deemed real estate services essential. I think that's fortunate because I was talking to an agent, a good friend of mine from Pennsylvania, where their governor said, no, you're not showing properties. Same thing in New York. Governor Cuomo came out and said specifically, real estate brokers, you will not show properties. So, our governor sees it differently and deemed real estate essential services. I think that's great. And even though showings have slowed down, there are showings. We're still putting properties under contract. My question is this. What happens with a buyer or seller or somebody now that we have a contract, we have an executed contract, it's going through the process and they say, you know what, I changed my mind, or I'm not buying that property. I'm not selling that property. Can they do that due to the circumstance?
Well, there is a form on the Texas Real Estate Commission on TREC that came out with a COVID addendum. And what this addendum does is you can basically fall into two categories. Number one would be, okay, we can extend the contract, the residential purchase contract, by 30 days if you were affected by COVID-19. And then the other option is for them to mutually agree to rescind the contract, to cancel it completely, and then the buyer gets their earnest money back, no problem, and everybody goes their merry way. So those are the two options. But the key is, unfortunately, at the bottom of that COVID-19 addendum, it says consult your attorney. And the reason that they say that is because it's unclear and it's not defined in the document whether or not, how do you fall under the umbrella of the COVID-19? Like, how do you know if you are that person that is affected by that and you can get out of the contract? The other day I was on the show, I told you, the radio show, and an investor called. I know you have a lot of investor clients, and said, hey, I want to get out of this contract. I was purchasing a house as an investment, and I just, the market doesn't look like it's going to be really good. I just kind of want to get out of this contract. Can I do that? Well, no, that is not a reasonable circumstance under COVID-19. Again, it goes back to a case-by-case basis and whether or not you were impacted by it and it actually affected you. You lost your job, not just because, no, I don't feel like it, because even in a normal circumstances, that wouldn't be a sufficient enough reason, right?
Absolutely. There's a lot of, how do I put it? There's a lot of, well, what do we do? Can I, so I'll give you an example. I had a sale that went through about a week and a half ago. And my client, the seller, doesn't live in Houston. He lives in Los Angeles. So basically, he wanted to extend the contract by 30 days because they were closing at the end of the month. Buyer said no, because, I'm going to lose my rate lock. And I had movers, painters, contractors, everyone's coming to the house. And he was basically saying, I cannot go to an airport, or I'm refusing to go to an airport and catch a flight to Houston because, and it wasn't to sign the closing docs. He could have done that from California. It was to clear the house. And we had a huge difference in opinion, and it started to get a little nasty for a little bit. But this happened before the COVID-19 addendum came out, because then we could have said, hey, look, let's extend it for 30 days. And the advice I gave him is, you should consult an attorney, but the contract has you closing on or before the 30th. So, you know, anything outside of that, I don't know what are the stipulations. And that's why it's great to speak to someone like yourself who might know what do you do in these circumstances, where he was trying to get an extension and he was saying, I have an extenuating circumstance that should allow me to close, you know, later than what we originally agreed. However, of course, the contract has nothing about coronavirus in it, right?
Of
So,
course. Well, it's a matter of looking at their contract, you know, the standard track residential contract.
absolutely.
There's force majeure clauses. This would probably fall under that. And I think that the buyer was a bit unreasonable. I mean, who doesn't understand that the
Yeah,
airports are closed? Like, you know, everybody everywhere in the world is affected. Like there's countries that are even closed to tourists right now.
yeah,
Trump isn't allowing anyone to come in here from China and a lot of parts of Europe. So I mean, it's very. I think the seller was pretty unreasonable in that situation, and unfortunately, you know, hopefully, I think it would have been able to be solved with like just a simple letter on behalf of your client to the
yeah.
title
They ended up
company and to.
exchanging emails directly. Um, and I was trying to get on all on a conference call, like, hey, let's get some reasonable minds together. But
How was the realtor handling it on the other side? How was the seller's realtor or the buyer's
the
realtor?
buyers were, he wasn't very helpful. He
Hmm.
wasn't, you know, it just seemed that he was like, hey, look, they're adamant about closing on the 30th of March and this has to be done. Otherwise they're, you know, they're in default. And
Mm.
it was just incredible because it's like the CDC came out and said to avoid places that have 50 or more people. I think an airport qualifies
Of
for
course, that's so
right?
unreasonable, and it's sad to hear that the agent didn't help out the situation because a lot of times you guys are great at counseling your clients to, you know, be more reasonable in these kind of situations. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah, so that was pretty crazy. Um, Let me see. Another question that I wanted to ask real quick was about the the evictions. Uh, okay, so we talked about the evictions and the moratorium. What about the CARES Act? Like, is there any advice for somebody who can get some assistance? They just passed the CARES Act. How could somebody reach out and get assistance under the provisions of the CARES Act? Who would someone turn to? Because, you know, the average small business doesn't know anything about this.
Right. Well, I think the CARES Act is a great thing that the federal government put out. I'm not a specialist on that, but from watching the news a lot, I can tell you that a lot of small business owners qualify for that. I think if you have less than 500 employees, you can't have any felonies, you can't have any type of criminal acts. You have to have a good credit report. And I think if you just submit your application online, there are tons of resources. I understand it's a fairly short application and they'll follow up with you. You submit it online, you tell them all of your basically tax information from last year, and they're giving advances. I think there's like the economic injury. Is that the one you're
The-
referring to? Economic injury
yes, there's
assistance,
the economic injury, and then there's the payment protection
the
program.
payment, the PPP, right? That one's through a lender. So contact your bank on the payment protection plan and see that usually it'll cover you for 2 months of your payroll. So if you keep, it's basically an incentive, the PPP, to help you keep your current employees and not to fire them. So in order for the economy to stay and grow after this and sustain itself, the government is doing this as an incentive so that you don't fire your employees, and they'll cover your payroll for 2 whole months if you show them proof of your payroll expenses on a typical month, like last month of February, I think is what they're asking for, or January. And they're very helpful. And basically with that one, my understanding is it's at 0%. Um, no, I'm sorry, it's not at 0%, but it's forgivable if you show proof that you used it to pay your employees, which is awesome. You don't have to pay at all back. But if you do have to pay it back, then it's like at 4% interest. It's super low. So it's really worth it. So I
Yeah,
recommend they look into that.
yeah, that's a great resource. Also, I heard about the unemployment insurance being extended to independent contractors, self-employed. There's a ton of resources coming out. The thing is just a lot of information at one time. So, you know,
And
it's real difficult to get, you know, and then not to mention everyone's worried about food and, you know, not being evicted and such. So,
Yes, it's tough. For independent contractors, they also have to apply for the economic injury assistance. They have to apply for that because they don't qualify for unemployment under the Texas Workforce Commission. So they can't apply for that. But then there are other resources for independent contractors out there, so you guys can be protected if you are in that category. And then there's also other resources for larger businesses, much larger, like Fortune 500 company. They're in another category, and there's another pool set aside for them as well.
that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
is there, let me see if there's any questions. We have a few people watching live on Facebook. Um, it's really a treat to have you with us today. Is there anything that you want to bring to our attention, or anything you want to talk about in particular?
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. What we're doing as a firm to just help out during this time, we've never done this before. We'll do it for your audience, and I'm going to launch this on our website as well at www.l2legal.com. We're going to do free powers of attorneys for people who can't make it to the closings. For that, like if it's an elderly person, I've been getting calls a lot about that, and they don't want to risk it, and they don't want their mom and dad going out. Then I'm going to do have our firm draft the powers of attorney so that they can have their son or their daughter or their spouse go on their behalf. We're also launching some new wills and trust packages that are going to be a lot more economical for people in this state of crisis and uncertainty. If they want to get their will done, we're going to do it on a much more economical scale, and that'll also be available on our website. We'll also do free phone consultations for the first initial consultation. We're available. Our attorneys are here to help you if you have any questions, whether you're going to get evicted or whether you're going to get foreclosed on or anything like that, or even for landlords or any other real estate matter that they may have.
Oh, that's amazing. How can people get a hold of you?
So they can call us at 713-364-6510. They can also visit us online at www.l2legal.com. They can find us on Facebook at La Rochelle Luna, and they can send us an email at info@l2legal.com.
That's awesome. I certainly appreciate it. So I want to ask you, I've been asking everybody who's been coming on the show this question, and I know no one knows for certain, but what do you think this is gonna all clear up and we can start to get back to business as usual? What is your prediction?
Well, I don't want to scare anybody, but I've been telling everyone September. I believe that, yeah, I'm just being realistic, and I'm usually I'm the optimist, in the family, but I really believe, to be honest, because the government, it doesn't want to scare anyone. So they're saying, first they gave us a March 30th, and then on March 29th, they tell you we're extending it to April, and then they're going to tell us that again in May. But
Yeah.
I think as far as the economy really boosting again and seeing it working, September. As far as the quarantine, no, I don't think the quarantine will last past, personally, from watching news so much, I would say at the end of May, I hope, if we all stay home, which I personally have been doing, if we stay home and we really listen and try to contain the situation. But as far as the economy ramping up and seeing the typical real estate market and things, well, you're the expert on the market, but as far as seeing the businesses and the economy flowing again, I would say it'll be back and running hopefully in September. I really feel for our restaurant, the restaurant group, they're really hurting the most. And so why we try to support them as best we can, but I know that a lot of them won't be able to make it through this tough time, but we're here to try to support them as much as possible, take out, buy gift cards, that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I'm telling everybody to support small businesses. I've been doing a small business local shout out for local small business. It's just really heartbreaking. You know how many small how many small businesses are weeks away from not making their bills, and
How much they fired their employees. It's really hard to see how many people, hotel industry, the airline industry. They're really hit hard,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think now the American economy is like a train, is what I tell people. You can't just shut it on and shut it off on the drop of a dime. It's going to take some time to get going again. So I think you might be right as far as September. I think we're going to have it stay home order until probably mid-June. I think probably mid-June is when they're going to like slowly start letting people back out again, maybe get back to work. So, like I was telling my son, because he misses school, the oldest, and of course misses his classmates. And he was saying, well, they're out of school until the first week of May. So he said, we're going to go back to school for like 2 weeks. And I said, no, it's not going to happen. I think
I
the
don't
school
think
year's
so either.
over. Oh yeah, the
I
school
think you're
year's
right. You're going to
over.
be homeschooling for the rest of the academic calendar year.
Yeah, I'm starting to do 5th grade math again. I haven't done it in years. I'm like, it comes back quickly though.
I wonder how many newfound teachers will come out from this. I want to be a teacher now. From homeschooling their kids. It's
Yeah,
tough.
well, there was a study done that when there's these kind of events that happen that push people out of any given industry, back in the 80s when oil and gas dropped from $30 a barrel to $2 or $3 a barrel,
Yeah.
and thousands of people were laid off in Houston. They did a study that the majority of the people who get laid off from any given industry and they end up going into a different industry, they never come back to that industry. And
Really?
you see people, and my mom was one of them because she couldn't get a job in the 80s, so she ended up becoming a school teacher, and she retired recently.
Wow. Well,
And then
maybe she'll
same
go
thing.
back to help like some of those doctors are doing.
Yeah.
Shout out to those doctors. They've
Oh
been
man.
on the front line, first responders, firefighters, police officers, nurses. They've been doing a great job too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
No, that's true. And the oil and gas right now isn't doing great either. They're being hit hard too. I know a lot of people that are companies laying off employees and downsizing and cutting costs, but we'll get through this, stay positive, and just know that we're all in this together, and this too shall pass, and we can beat the virus. We can do this together.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
You're absolutely amazing. Let me see, I had somebody ask a question.
Sure.
It was, okay, yeah. So we have your contact info. That's l2legal.com.
Correct.
L number 2legal.com. I'll post it right here on the feed. And
Sure.
and thank you for everything you do for everybody and all the help you're providing. That means a lot to people in need.
You're welcome. We try to do our share, and if everybody does a little bit like you're doing, I saw one of your videos the other day helping people in need. Did anyone contact you after that?
Yes, we actually did one delivery, and we have another one going out today.
Oh, that's
So
so sweet of you to do that. Can I ask you real quick, what do you think is going to happen specifically with the real estate market? Are people going to be afraid to list their properties or buy, or what do you think is going to happen here like this summer?
that's a great question. A lot of people have been asking me, should I still list? And the short answer is yes, because if you don't list, you won't sell it, right? There's 0% chance. So let's put it on the market. There are still buyers who need to move, who had a life-changing event and they need to move. Either their lease expired, they're relocating, they're downsizing, they're upsizing. There's a new baby, or they're getting married. I mean, these are the life-changing events that give us a reason to either help someone buy or sell a house. So someone who has had that life-changing event, that's still happened, and they still need a home, and they're still looking for homes. And we are still putting homes under contract. So if someone's interested in selling, I would say keep it going. When this lifts, again, my belief is mid-June, we're going to start to get back to normal. It's not going to happen instantaneously, but we'll start. You want to be positioned on the market and ready to go, and let the buyers see the homes. So
That's great advice. And as far as buying, are there incentives that the government or the lenders are coming out with for buyers?
Well, yeah, interest rates are getting slashed. So I had a sale 2 weeks ago, and they got a 3.0% interest rate.
Wow, very good.
On a VA loan. Now, obviously veterans get better rates than everyone else for the most part, but 3.0 on a 30-year fix, I don't remember ever seeing that.
I wish I would have gotten that.
Yes, that's a free loan pretty much.
Yeah, that's great, because on such a large amount, when you're talking in the hundred thousands of dollars, 100,000 plus, it really makes a difference.
Yes. So that's
Definitely.
absolutely incredible. You know, so yeah, I'm telling people, if you're still interested, if you're in the market, it's going to be a great time to take advantage of what could be all-time record low interest rates.
Awesome. And are people having, you think the market, like the sellers are having to price their houses at a lower price because of the pandemic, or do you think that that's not really affecting the price point?
I think sellers are having to be more realistic with where they should price it. You know, a lot of sellers, I mean, quite often want to maximize and maybe overprice it a little bit and kind of test the market. I think given the circumstance, that's just not a good option right now. If you do want to put your house on the market, do it. And I put homes on the market last week, but we need to price it right, like price it really where it should be, if not maybe slightly aggressive, just to, you know, catch the market's attention. And we'll, you know, like I said, we're still showing homes.
That's
So
wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are doing virtual tours. You
yeah.
guys
Oh,
need to call
absolutely.
out Morad. He's amazing. So thank you so much for having me on. Any other questions that you have or your audience, I'm happy to answer them. They can call us or email us anytime. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for your time. Please stay safe, and God bless.
Thank you. Stay in home, and thank you for everything you do too. And take care of your family. Talk to you
Thank you. I
soon.
hope to see you soon when this all clears.
Yes, of course. Take care.
Thank,
Bye bye.
thank you. We'll see you soon. God
Bye
bless.
bye.